Okay, it's finally time to make our first real game in MonoGame. And what we're going to do over these next two lectures is give you a step-by-step help/instructions to show you how to incorporate keyboard movement and collision detection to create a simple game. And we're going to do what's called a falling or a catch game. We're going to collect and then assign our assets to our game, and then we're going to add our directives at the top. We're going to declare our variables. We're going to load our content. We're going to make the mouse visible on the screen, the different thing that we haven't done before, and we're obviously going to code the draw. And that'll be it in the first part, and then the second part we'll work on the update routine, which has a lot of the logic and skills like that. Now, if you don't feel like working through it with me, after a couple of lectures, I have a lecture, 2 lectures from now, which will just do a recap, like a little show and tell of this particular program that we're going to put together ourselves from scratch. So, whatever your learning style that you want to use, that's fine with me. You can either work through it with me for the next couple of lectures, or just look at the finished product and take a look at the code that we use to make it. Okay, let's set up our project before we get really rolling. And we'll call this keyboard collision game. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to press OK and just get ourselves set up here. Now there's going to be a lot of breaks in these next 2 lectures, because what I want you to do is stop the video, go away and try it yourself first, and then compare it to my answer. That's the best way to learn it. Just don't wait for me to show you the exact code and then you just start typing away. Let's try to do a little bit more on your own now. And really, your first job right now is to go on the internet and get some images. I need like maybe a ball that's going to be falling from the sky, and maybe a man along the bottom that's either going to catch it or hit it in his head. I'm going to actually find a soccer ball and a soccer player, and I'm going to have the soccer ball dropping from the sky, and he's going to sort of bounce it off his head. And every time he gets it on his head, he gets a point. I'm also going to need a couple of wave files, maybe a sound effect for when it hits his head, and maybe a sound effect when it bounces off the wall or just hits the ground. I also want you to, after you get all those assets, put them in the content folder and then connect them via the pipeline. While you're in the pipeline, I'd also like you to set up your sprite font. Okay, so those are your objectives. We'll come back in a few minutes and I'll show you what I did along those lines. Okay, did you get your first job done? Here is my MonoGame pipeline tool, and I've went and got some images and some sound effects, and here they are. I'm going to have a crashing sound, a thumping sound when the ball hits the person's head. I've got a picture of a soccer ball. Remember, in most of the world, it's called football, not soccer. And I've got a person that's going to be going along the bottom trying to hit the soccer ball. And I've got my sprite font set up. Okay, so let's make sure you've got those ready, and then we move on to the next stage. Okay, here's my next question I'm going to ask you. Since we're going to incorporate sound effects in here, and you may use actual sound effects, or you may use a song, you need to implement 2 directives up here. What are they? Put them in, please. All right, let's see if you found the right directives to add. This is what you need to add to make songs play, usually background music, but you can use them also for little bursts of sound and sound effects. Okay, so make sure you added those directives to the top of your program. Now on to the declaration section. Okay, now I'll pose a couple of questions, take a break, and then I'm going to get you to come back and look at the answers. All right, so now what we need to do is our declarations. And what I'm going to do is draw a little sketch of the game here, so you get a rough idea what's in my mind and how I want to make it. So there's going to be a player down here that's going to be moving side to side. At the beginning of the game, there's going to be a soccer ball, in mine anyway, that's going to drop. And if it hits him in the head, it bounces back in the same direction. If it misses him down here, it comes back around at the top. Now, eventually, as the ball's bouncing around, it may bounce off of this wall. We will let it bounce off that wall. and it can bounce off that wall and bounce off that wall, except when it hits down here, it goes through and comes around the top again. So the only wall it doesn't bounce off is the bottom. As the player is trying to hit the soccer ball with his head, somewhere around here there will be a score telling us how many times he's hit it with his head. Okay, so that's a rough, quick idea of what the game is going to look like and how it's going to play out. So now think about everything you need and declare all your variables. Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back with the answer in a few minutes. All right, let's go through the declarations, see if you matched up or you're just waiting for me to show you how to do it. So we got that ball dropping from the sky, right? So that's going to be a texture 2D. I'm going to call it soccer ball. Okay, I also need to know where it is, right? So we're going to need a vector 2 for that, and I'll call it ball position. And why don't I initialize it? And I'm going to show you a cool way to initialize. You actually say 0, so that's kind of like a quick way to say 0, 0. So it'll be at the top left corner. So that's our ball. Now that ball is going to be moving, right? So we need to have like a velocity vector. We'll call it ball speed, and we'll make it equal to a new vector 2. And this one, we'll have it move over 150 over and 150 down, and that'll be our velocity vector. All right, next we worry about our soccer player. So another image, so texture 2D, and we'll call him soccer player. And we also got to know where he is, right? So, or she is. So we need to define a vector 2, and we'll call this player position. All right, next we declare our sounds, and I'm going to use a song to do that. And I'm going to call the first one the thump sound, and the second one I'm going to call the crash sound. Now you might notice also that below this I've commented out sound effects. Some people report that sound effects, although they don't give them an error, they're not hearing them clearly. So what I've done here is I'm going to use the song to make little bursts of sounds. Okay. Now, if yours work fine, sound effects, keep those in, and I'm going to do parallel code so that you can still see how you do it with sound effects as opposed to song if you want. Last two declarations. Remember, we got to type in some text, so we got to declare a sprite font, which we'll call font. And remember, I want to do a score as the person hits the ball in the head. So we've declared our score. So there's our variable declarations. Did you get them? Okay, do you understand why you need them and how we're going to use them? Next up, obviously, we got to load them in. Actually, before I go to load content, I want to remind you of this. This is how you center the screen. But I also want to throw in a new command. Ever notice that when you play mono games, or in the old time XNA games, when you moved your mouse over the screen, where was it? It was gone, and you kind of be disoriented. So you can actually turn the mouse on, and I'm going to put it in here in the initialize routine, and I'm going to say is mouse visible equals true. Okay, and that'll turn the mouse on so you can actually see it on screen. And here's what I mean. Now watch, when I move my mouse over it now, there's going to be a white mouse on the screen, as opposed to before where it would sort of disappear as you went over the screen. Okay, time to code how to load in our assets. So what I'd like you to do in this section is obviously you need to load in the soccer ball, the soccer player, you got to load in the sounds and the font. But one other thing, I want you to mathematically figure out how to get that soccer player, whatever you decide to put at the bottom of your screen, roughly in the middle, so that when the game starts, that person is right in the middle, down at the bottom of your screen. Okay, take a chance. We'll come back in a couple of seconds and I'll show you my results. All right, let's start loading in our assets. So we'll start off with this soccer ball, and we'll use the content load, of course. Content.load, and then it's a texture 2D, and my soccer ball is called football. Okay, so this will depend on obviously what you decided to load in and how you're going to implement it. The soccer player, okay, let's load that in, and again, it's whatever object or image you decided to have along the bottom of your game. And my soccer player is called people. All right, so that's the two images. What else do I need? I need the sounds, and the font, and that last thing I was challenging you with, the position, I'll do at the very end. So let's load in the sounds right now while we're here. So I'm going to have that thump, there it is right there, thump sound. And it's a song though, it's not a sound effect. Okay, dot load, so it's a song, and I think it's called thump, spelled like that. Okay, and I'm also going to have a crashing sound, so crash sound, and content, and again it's a song, it's a really short song, it's an MP3 like for like a second. Okay, and that one's called, I'm pretty sure it's called Crash. Okay, we also have a sound effect. Might as well do that right now too. Or not sound effect, a font. So we're going to load that in. So that's a sprite font, obviously. And I think I've used that in a number of examples, score. All right, we're almost set up. So as I mentioned, I want to position that player at the beginning of the game roughly in the middle down at the bottom. So that's player position, and we're going to make it equal to, obviously we're going to have to use vector 2 bracket. So I've got to go down to the bottom. So halfway across, first of all, let me do the X. So it's that, that stuff with that graphics, I'm going to divide it by 2. A little cheating there. Okay, and I have to also put the word new here. Okay, and so I'm going to go halfway across, and I got to go down to the bottom. All right, so let me think this out. So halfway across, and then is that going to be too far across? Well, I'm going to take away, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take away the soccer player dot width, actually half of him. Okay, so that'll actually be kind of more in the middle, wouldn't it? So dot width divided by 2. So I'm going to go halfway across, and then at that spot take off half of the player. So yeah, I'll be closer to dead middle. And now that's going to be how much we're going to go across. Now I got to go down to the bottom. Okay, when I go down to the bottom, that's going to be too far, but we'll figure that out in a second. So let me paste this in and have a height on it. This one I'm not going to cut in half. I'm going to keep it like that. But then I'm going to subtract the height of my soccer player. So soccer player dot height, semicolon. Let me slide this back again. That's a mouthful here. So what I'm trying to do is roughly put my soccer player right here. Okay, so what I did with this line is I went halfway across the screen, roughly, all right, which would put me right here. But then if I drew the soccer player, remember, that's the top corner here on the left, so it would be drawn over here. Okay, so I took off half to push them over a little bit more, so it'd be in the middle like that. Okay, so that's where that math comes in. The other one's a bit more straightforward. I go down to the very bottom, height-wise, and then I move up to the top of the player's head. So he'll be nicely set up along the bottom. Okay, so there's all our load content and a little bit of math to set us up. Last thing we're going to do in this lecture is do the draw, because it's kind of short and sweet and it'll fit into the specified time limit. And then in the second lecture, we'll do sort of like the heavy lifting math and collision detection and keyboards and everything else. Okay, so let's finish up with the draw. We've got 3 things to draw in here. I've given you a little starter. Wow, I gave you a big hint there, right? So I want you to draw the ball, whatever you've got coming from the sky. I'm going to need you to draw the person along the bottom, and also somewhere on the screen, top left, top right, whatever you decide, put down the word score and then the variable contents of score, which would obviously be 0 right now. But those are the 3 things I'd like you to put in there. Okay, so let's start off, and sprite batch.draw, and we're going to draw the, we don't have any background here, right? We're just using blue, so not worrying about that. So we're going to draw the soccer ball, and it's going to be at ball position. and we're going to use color white. Okay, so there's the first thing. Second thing I want to draw on the screen is the person. All right, so sprite batch.draw, and now that's the, in my case, soccer player. All right, and it'll be at player position, and then color dot white. Last thing is the text. That one we use the draw string, so sprite batch dot draw string bracket, and we tell the computer about the font we're going to use. We're going to say the word score, space that a bit over so it's not right stuck to the number. We're going to concatenate it to the actual score, and here's where you can make up any number you want that's reasonable. I'm going to put it near the top left corner, so 100, 100, comma, color dot white, semicolon. Okay, let's do a save, and we'll see if we've messed up anywhere or we're ready to roll. Whoa, huge pictures. So what have I got to do? Well, I could resort to a fancier version of the draw technique, which would scale it down, or what you could do is go into an image processing program. So give me a second and I will go into Fireworks. I'm going to rescale the images to a more reasonable size. Through the magic of video, let's try it out now and see what they look like rescaled. There they are, beautiful. I rescaled the soccer ball to 50 by 50 size pixel, and the guy at the bottom, I made him 75 by 75. I think he was 512 by 512. Okay, so now we are ready to go into our next lecture where we will focus in on the update method and all the bits and pieces that make it in terms of movement, collision detection, sound, and everything else. Okay, so thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next lecture.